So here's the thing that I can't stand. After someone is shot by the cops, usually an African American, immediately the media jumps into overdrive. I know it's fed by leaks from the police departments who want to exonerate themselves and say it was a good shooting, but you don't have to do their dirty work for them. They jump in and immediately go into, yeah, but did he have it coming? Now, that sounds way too harsh. Do they really say that? Yeah, they do. Not in those words. They say, yes, but what was his criminal record? Did he have any criminal record? Now, Philando Castile was just killed in Falcon Heights in Minnesota. They immediately like, okay, yeah, but what did he do? He had a busted taillight, and there might have been some marijuana in his car. Yeah, I know that they're always busting into white neighborhoods and shooting all the white kids with marijuana, right? Oh, yeah, that's right. They never do that. So now people watching this will go, not never. It's happened. It's happened. But we're constantly trying to defend the dead. So Trayvon Martin, 17-year-old, he's got Skittles in his hand, iced tea or whatever. No. Yeah, but he had trouble in school once. He had detention. So Zimmerman executed him for that? Why are you even mentioning that? What does that have to do with the fight that they had that day? Did Zimmerman pursue him or did he not? Did Zimmerman shoot him or did he not? What does that have to do with his school suspensions? Oh, he might have smoked marijuana a bunch of days ago. What? Yeah, he might have had a drink. What in the world does that have to do with whether Zimmerman shot him that day in a way that was unwarranted or not? Well, you see, the thing is, they think it has something to do with it because they think, well, if we can prove that he's a violent black man by nature and go into his past, well, then everybody will feel better. Oh, yeah, right. That guy was a violent black guy anyway. Of course the cops had to shoot him. There is no problem in America. Let's just go back to how things were. So now how is CNN helping that with Alton Sterling, the person who was shot a day ago? They used, for example, the one picture of him that they used in the segment that they did on him yesterday was his mugshot. Okay, now, that's from 16 years ago. So why are you using that picture? So it's not like you couldn't find any pictures. Here, we found a picture. You know, we did some real investigative reporting, went on his Facebook page and grabbed a picture from there. Now, you could make whatever you want of that picture, but that's his recent picture. No, it's a scary black guy, criminal record. Alison Camerota is going to be talking to a member of his family, and let's see which direction she decides to go.
We understand, or at least the police have said, that there was an anonymous person who called 911 and said that there was a guy selling CDs, who we believe to be your nephew, who had threatened him with a gun. Did your nephew have a gun?
No, my nephew would never have a gun because of his situation.
Meaning
would never
what?
have a gun.
But what does that mean?
Meaning that he was kind of in a little trouble with the law. But he would never have a gun. He was on probation, but he was taken off. But in the state of Louisiana, he cannot carry a weapon because of his previous incident. He cannot carry a weapon.
And his previous incident, does he have a history of violence?
No, he don't have a history. No. He was like a gentle giant. No, we don't have a history of violence.
Can you tell us what his previous incident with the law was?
I can tell you this about that. It's public records in Louisiana, but it was something so minor, so it's not worth even saying over the phone.
Okay, look, you want to ask about whether he had a gun. I get it. I mean, although very appropriately she said in the beginning, we understand that's because the police have said. I know, because you take what the police say as fact. It's over. Police say it. That we're done with it. They're legitimate. You're not really legitimate. Anyway, but I'm fine with it. You want to ask about whether he had a gun in that altercation? I get it. By the way, we have a picture. So the cops say that they had shot him because he had a gun. Now, whether he had a gun on him, the police still have not clarified. But we do know that when he was shot dead, he did not have a gun in his hand. I don't know how much clearer it could be. And they were right on top of him. There was 3 guys on top of him. They had him pinned down. They had the gun inches from his chest. He did not have a gun in his hand. It's right there, right? So, and I don't know whether he had a gun on his person, but this is what I'm talking about. this is part of the process of smearing the dead, because what are we doing? We're talking about, did he have it coming? Did he deserve to be executed on the spot like that? If he has one in his pants and they think they see one, we can't see one in that picture, but maybe he had something tucked away in his pants, but there, you've already got him pinned down. So I've shown you videos on today's show. You go back and watch those clips. White guys walking around with guns pointing it at cops left and right. Pointing it at cops, they don't get shot. He might have a gun on him, but it's not in his hand, and they're right on top of him. Boom, 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 boom. Then right afterwards, let's talk about how guilty he was. No, let's talk about how guilty the cops were who shot him. But you don't want to have that conversation. So instead, let's show you a mugshot. And then the part of the interview that's really disgusting. Did he have a history of violence? Now, even if he had a history of violence, let's say he was a terrible guy, had done a bunch of terrible things, but they've got him subdued and they've got him pinned down, should they execute him on the spot? Is that the implication? Well, if he had a history of violence, I mean, obviously he should be executed. No, that isn't the question. The question is, at that moment, could they have subdued him in another way? Could they have taken a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage chance, since they have all those guys around him, that maybe he wouldn't get the gun because he didn't want, because you're pinning him down? Look, anybody who saw the video, and we showed it to you yesterday, we showed it to you from 2 different angles, you can see, of course, they had 1,000 other choices. They chose, I don't want to take that tiny, tiny, tiny chance. I'd rather just kill the guy on the spot. Later, we'll have CNN smear him and say, well, I don't know. I'll bring up charges from 16 years ago. It's history of violence. Trayvon Martin might have smoked marijuana at some point. This guy might have done that. Come on. Philando Castile had a busted taillight. They had it coming. Just smear the dead, and you're done with it. Dead man can't talk, and the media talks for the cops and for the people in power. So problem solved. Nothing to see here. Well, we're sick of it, and we're not going to take it anymore.